Welcome to Stormz Tech Corner, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast, all things technical and gaming. I'm Stormzlord, co-guild master at the DCN Guild's Hands of Fate and ESO, council member of the Hands of Fate Guild and Ashes of Creation, and this week we're going to look at gaming data. No, how to make cheating data, but the data that's used in gaming, the back ends of all the games out there. Now, as connected to the internet, there's data going back and forth, whether it's leaderboards, timers, etc. Where this data is kept, where it should be kept. We're also going to look at an alpha version of the Hands of Fate Guild Tools application that will be soon out on Android and then iOS for Hands of Fate members. We're also going to look at some security issues. We're going to look at the leaderboards on a mobile application, currently Zoopop by Digital Pepper Studios. We're also going to look at some analytics, different types of analytics that are kept, and anti-cheat data. Right? This is all types of data that are going back and forth between client and server, at multiple servers, when you're gaming. So welcome. Let's look at this and go forward to the Guild application, Guilds of Fate, Guild Tools. So what we have here is with the Hands of Fate website. And if you notice, we go over and we select Guild Tools. Now I'm the council member, so you'll see some secrets. Nope, I'm kidding. You'll see just the menus that we have for Guild Tools. We have Guild Tools for members, for officers, and Guild Council Tools. Now we are going to put together, or started putting together, a Guild Tools application. And this is where we're going to look at some of the data, how data is used in gaming. This is just an example within this mobile application and also a mobile game. Clients, whether they're on mobile, whether they're on PC, Mac, Linux, do exactly the same thing. They may use a different protocol, they may use a different way of doing it, but they're passing data back and forth every time you play. Every time you turn on the game, somebody knows it, they're recording it, they got analytics on that. So let's move forward. And we'll cut that piece out. So here we have the Hands of Fate website. Now we're going to switch over to looking at a real quick diagram. Isn't that exciting? All right, so this is a quick diagram I rolled together. Guild Tools. We have the mobile app. We then enter username and password on the mobile app. Click login, which we'll show you in a minute. It passes that up to some PHP code. That PHP code then calls the WordPress database. The WordPress database passes back to the PHP code and then passes it back to the Guild Tools mobile app. Now this, again, is a high-level process of how all data works. You go from a client, in this case the Guild Tools mobile app, to a set in the middle, or a data layer, right? That middle layer then goes over to the data access layer, then calls the backend database. The reason you do that is you can then change the client if you want to without changing the data access layer, in this case the PHP code. You can change the backend or the actual data layer, the WordPress, without changing the middle layer if you want to. Now we have security built into all this. We're going to get better security built into all of that, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But this works whether it's you're playing The Witcher, whether you're playing ESO, whether you're playing the new Atlas MMO, whether you're going to play Ashes of Creation in the future, whatever it is, whether it's a mobile game like Zoopop or Clan Crash or whatever it is, I don't play Clash of Clans. Same thing. They're doing analytics on everything you do, as well as leaderboards and all that, which we can look at. Okay, so that's a real quick look at the diagram. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull up the Guild of Tools, the Hands of Fate Guild Tools application. Now this is built in Unity. Again, I predominantly use Unity, but I also use the Unreal Engine, but just not as much as I use Unity. Unity is what I'm used to. Unity uses C#. No difference. I could write the same thing in C++ in Unreal. I just had some assets over here I wanted to use. And those assets, I'll pull those out and list those down below. But just for everybody's sake, I'm using what's called a PHP handler from Salus, a 4G UI kit from Hanati, an RPG MMO UI, actually number 5 from Evil, love that name, and then a loading animation software from Unlock Software. Now these again are listed below in the links. I will start this to demonstrate how this works. Now remember, this is currently actually a PC program. It's running like it is Unix, or excuse me, like it is Android. When I transfer it to the Android phone, it works as well. We're going to test it on Android, roll it out to some beta testers on Android. Once that works, we're going to roll it out to iOS as well and production so everybody can use it. So let's type in username. Hopefully I'll type it in correctly. And we'll type in a password, which you can't see now. Logs in, animations come up. Again, this is all just mobile stuff. While it's stinking around, notice I've got some debug statements over here on the right. It went ahead and it called from the running program to the PHP code. The PHP code checked the database, confirmed they're a user, confirmed their username and password, got their information, or in this case mine, passed it back to the client, right, using HTTP, which I'm going to change to HTTPS, as well as using, I'll do that pretty quickly. It then pulled the post arguments to bring everything back. We can then shut this down in a second, but we'll look at the view standings. Again, same thing. It calls out to the WordPress site. It gets the data. It confirmed me again. And then it has a list of currently all our rankings for members. I need to sort them. Right now they're not sorted, so I'll sort those before we send this off to alpha testing. I'm also going to remove those, but I just haven't done that yet. You can close that. Now, if you notice, if I hit view standings again, it opens without calling out. One of the things you have to think about when it comes to gaming data and any data is how often do you hit the server. We don't get guild members often enough to, every time you open that window, get a new list. It doesn't really happen that often. So we're going to just leave it to call it out when you open the application. The first time it's going to call. If for some reason someone has added and you need to see them, you can close the app, reopen it, and then do it again. But we keep that on the client so the client knows where that is. Now, that's how data goes back and forth. So let me show you then what we have. And we'll take a second here and show you some of this code on this side of it. Now, we have a, in this case, we're using C++, Visual Studio. The code behind that is over here. And again, I noticed in testing, alpha testing here, that we don't have, or it is not set to HTTPS for some reason, so I'll change that. But we have two pieces of code here that I'm working at. PHP Script and then Net Manager. Now again, PHP Script came from an asset called PHP Handler. Very good way to do it. But what I wanted to do was take that, modify it so we could use it the way we wanted to use it. So here, see, this should be HTTPS instead of HTTP. So we'll change that. Automatically, it's going to change and be that way. We have some different things we were doing, but let me show you down here in the Net Manager, the real fun code. You'll notice I set up the frames. It's different ways of looking at Windows on mobile devices. And then I do a call login. Once that means you've put in the username, you've put in your password. It does a call login. What that does is a coroutine. So let me move this code. And then that coroutine here is called call login. So what it does is it does an authenticate user. So it starts code that is going to be a separate coroutine, and everything else stops. In other words, there's a yield, right? So it's a yield right here. We're yielding until it comes back. When it comes back, then we have to disseminate what was in the post arguments and where do they go. So they come in, I put them in different places, whether it's the name or whatever, right? Now, what that did, when we did a coroutine, the PHP request, it went over to this code in the PHP, and it then is a generic piece of code that every time I call any URL from this application, it goes through this PHP handler script. And then it does the call, which it calls, if you remember PHP, we had some PHP over here. Now, right now we have turned off the hash. I'll be turning that back on. Right now it's going to hash for MD5. We're going to change that hash to SHA-256. Just haven't made that change yet. So this is the code that it calls, right? Remember, the client calls a PHP script. Here's the PHP script. It's put up on the Hands of Fate WordPress PHP server. So it's up there. When it comes in, we take off the variables 1 and 2. Those are the username and password. We then sign in as that user. If it was an invalid username or password, we get an invalid user. It pops back to the application and states that. If not, if it is a valid user, we grab the guild key. In other words, the secret access key. What we have here, very similar to the way REST works with different APIs, the way Facebook works, the way Google works. When you work with them, you have to have a secret key in your client that you have retrieved from the server and that they know that's you, right? So the Hands of Fate guild members don't know it yet, but when this is rolled out, the first thing they have to do is go to the website, and there's one place that they can click on that says Get Secret Key. So each user has their own secret key, right? So there's different layers of security. One, HTTPS, which I just turned on, which for some reason was off. Must have been testing. We now have a secret key so that we can check what's coming in from the client. With security and gaming, with all this data going back and forth and cheat engines or the different ways they look at it and we look at it, you have to have security. One of those things is HTTPS for everything, right? Do not use HTTP. It's brand open. It's like throwing a postcard open. Everybody can see what you're doing. The second thing is you want to use a hash inside of HTTPS. So just on the odd chance they get into your HTTPS for whatever reason, you've then hashed it and encrypted it anyways. MD5 is an old hash, fairly easy to break. So you want to use at least SHA, probably 256 or above. And on top of that, on top of the HTTPS, on top of the encryption, on top of that, you have the secret key. Now, on top of that secret key, there's one other piece that we have that I haven't added yet, is a timestamp. So when a user requests something and then requests the next process in the sequence, we make sure, or we're going to make sure, it's within that time frame. So in case for some reason somebody has grabbed everything and they're able to resend it, unless it's sent within a number of minutes from the original request, it's going to be denied. Right? There's just different layers of security you want to use. This is probably a little overkill for a guild tools application for a game, but you never know. Plus, I wanted to set this all up so ensure I knew how it worked within Unity, within PHP, and within WordPress. I had not done that level of security in Unity and was interested, so we did that. Again, this is all my opinion on how to do this. One interesting thing that I really like about coding, whether it's gaming coding, business coding, whatever coding you want to do, it's your opinion. It's like art more than science. There's different ways to slice the bread, or in other words, a different way to skin a cat. Not that I want to skin a cat. So anyways, we have this PHP code that then grabs the information using WordPress, using formidable forms on WordPress as well. It strips the results of all HTML, gives it back to the code that we have over here, and then we come back to the net manager part where it then does each little piece and strips out In the case of the logon, it's going to strip out the name, the secret key, because we're going to pass the secret key back the next time to ensure that, yep, we still have the secret key. It does all this information. If there's an error, it needs to do a specific thing. It checks for the error code and all that. And that's just for that little bit of data that we're passing back, right? We're passing username, we're passing password. When that comes back, and let me open it up here a little bit differently. I'll change a frame so we can see it. This is just on the editor. So the login frame, we're going to turn it off. And then it pops here to the menu frame, right? So we're just getting the username. In this case, it's test, but my name is Stormzlord. It gets the rank and it gets the wallet points. Those are the three things, right? We're just passing three things back. Every time you open a game, again, no matter what the game it is, if it's a new game within the last 5 to 10 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years, they're passing data because they want to know what you're doing. Not for a nefarious reason to know what's happening. They want to know who's doing what. They want to do analytics. Now they might want to do some marketing, how much you do one thing versus another, how much you open a store and things like that. But all this data can be passed back. All right. Now, we looked at this one. We looked at the Hands of Fate guild tools, which again is right now it's in alpha testing. We'll be beta testing hopefully today or tomorrow. And then future, we'll get it to beta testing where more of the guild members can use it. And then eventually in production, so all guild members can use it. We just want to make sure it works before I move forward. And this version, or the minimum viable product for this version, is for members. We're then going to add the next version, which will be members and officers. And then members, officers, and council members. Again, this is all based on Unity for the code, the client, PHP for the code and the data access layer. And then the data is kept within the WordPress database. Alrighty then, we're going to now switch over to a different type of data, again, gaming. So let's take a pause here and we'll start up in a second. And welcome back to gaming data. We're looking at how data is used at a very high level in gaming. We're going to show you Digital Pepper Studio's Zoopop to demonstrate what gaming data is saved. And where it's saved and how it's saved. And you can see from this small bit of data how large sets of data are saved. So within Digital Pepper Studios Zoopop, and you'll notice, hey, I'm not there because there's a lot of green on the screen. So I'm like, the green screen really didn't work. So what we've done is we have this application that was developed from several assets in the Unity Asset Store. And I'll list those out real quick, but they are listed below. We have Jelly Garden by Candy Smith, Daily Rewards by Niobium Studios, a couple GUI packs, Frozen GUI and Animal World GUI, both by Racimi. Tremendous assets, all of them. So if you look at this code, you look at this application, you'll see a Facebook integration down there in the bottom right. If you were to click on that, you can log into Facebook, and then you can share with Facebook and your friends on Facebook your data, your level, what you passed, how you did, things like that. We actually within Facebook only share things out. We can get your friends list, and we do get your friends list, but we don't do anything other than post right to your account with all that information. We don't save it. It's all put into GameSparks as a leaderboard situation, but that's it, right? We don't save it. That's part of our privacy policy. So with every game out there, they now have what's called a privacy policy. They've had them in the past, but it's new on everything because some regulations have passed in Europe and then reflected over here in the United States. But with this level, again, it does Facebook, it does leaderboard on what's called GameSparks. So let me show you some code of how it goes. Bring it down here. Hold on. I gotta find it. The code is there. I'll cut that out most likely. And here's the code for Let's do it now. And here's the code for Facebook. We do a login. We can check the status, right? We can get your friends' information. We don't use it, but we just want to be able to share with your friends what you've done. Now, there's also what's called GameSparks, right? This is our leaderboard. This is where we can keep leaderboard information, whether you're playing Zoopop on the iOS or within Android, Xbox, which is not available on yet, any things like that on the Switch. All this can connect with GameSparks because GameSparks is a server-side set of data. Just like the Guild Tools piece or the Guild Tools application, you have your client, in this case Zoopop, you have your middleware, right, in this case, which is the GameSparks API. That GameSparks API then connects with the GameSparks database, right? That's your data layer in the back. So I can change Zoopop and not even change the GameSparks API at all, obviously. GameSparks can change their API without changing the data layer if they need to, and vice versa. If they decide we don't like where we're on data servers, they can change it. Specifically, GameSparks was purchased a couple of years ago by Amazon. So if they weren't originally using AWS, I bet you money the backend was changed so that they're using AWS, but that doesn't mean they have to change the API that you see. Right? This data is set up in such a way, if you remember Guild Tools, client, DAL or data access layer, and then data. Whether it's Facebook, GameSparks, whether it's Google with its leaderboards, all the same thing. You set it up that a client passes information to a middleware. That middleware then saves it to the back end. Now this is for leaderboard here, right? For Facebook, for social. We also have analytics, right? So within Zoopop, we have very simple little analytics because I had just started to play with Unity Analytics. So we simply have one, or two actually. We have an analytics event when the application is started. We kick off a game start analytics, which goes to a middle layer, which then goes to the back end, is saved, or we can look at it later that somebody started the game. We also have one other piece, like I said, for this particular game, where we check if a level has been completed. We save it off that this person, we don't know who you are, but this particular Android device finished a level, and this is the level that was finished, and that's it. We don't use it for anything else yet. We just started to look into this. When we have, if you look at our word drop game, you can't see it, but we are using a couple more pieces of analytics. We track that not only started, but a level was completed, and the name of the level, and the number of hints that was used to solve that level. We're trying to change the game so it's not too hard, but not too easy for each level as they progress. And one of the ways you want to do that was to track people, how much time they needed to do it, how many hints they had to use, things like that. Again, we're just starting to play with analytics. Analytics has been available for years in business applications. It's starting years ago, again, to probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, to be used within gaming applications, or in gaming period, video games. Again, whether you're on a mobile application, whether you're on Xbox, whether you're on PC, whether you're on a Switch or PS4, doesn't matter. Everything you're doing within reason is being tracked. Not for nefarious reasons, but it could be. But most companies are up above board because they're being tracked anyways. But they're looking at what you're doing for either marketing purposes or to make better games. And honestly, I'm okay with either one. I would rather have marketing directed toward what I'm looking at than something totally unrelated. Right? I am not in the age where I need to buy a lot of diapers. So I don't want to see advertisements for diapers. I'm in the age where I'm buying computers. I buy a lot of electronics. I buy a lot of software. So I want to see those advertisements. Those might pique my interest. Doesn't matter about anything else. But again, this is what marketing is doing, and it's data back and forth. My particular plan, or the Digital Piper Studios plan with Unity, allows me to have 500 distinct custom events within an application. Custom events. There's a slew of already there standard events, but custom events, 500 per application, and I have the pro level of Unity, right? Or the plus level, not the pro level. So there's a higher level, there's an enterprise level that's available, and each application has different things. But think about the amount of analytics that's going to be tracked on your particular game with any engine. They all offer this now, right? Because there are entire teams set aside for analytics of the game. Not necessarily, again, in a bad way. They want to track what you're doing, how often you go somewhere, how long do you spend there. Just like real world, they're trying to make a better service for you in a good way. They could be using it for nefarious purposes and others, but again, I don't know that. I assume they're not, because that's what I'm doing. Within Digital Piper Studios, we are just tracking things we can track to make a better game. I don't know who's playing the game. I honestly don't have time to worry about who's playing the game. I want to know that a group of people are playing it and they're enjoying it. And if it's getting too hard, I try to figure out how to help them. If it's getting too easy, again, I also want to help them, things like that. So that's what analytics is about. There's just so much that can be tracked, whether it's, again, I don't have to go into demographics, Google Analytics. We're going to look real quick at Unity Analytics. Just real quick here, we'll peek into it. Let me bring my browser up. You can't see it yet, so I'll bring it over here to where you can see it. I have a dashboard that I use for WordZap, which is one of our Word games. Or I could check, again, not many users. See, I want to increase that. Currently, it's less than 6, more like 1 to 0 a day. Definitely want to get better on that. But we're learning, right? We're trying to figure this out. We can track daily active users, right? We can track users across a month, new users, percentage of population, sessions per day, total playtime, all these different events, right? These are different things we can track, as well as custom events. Remember, I said 500 custom events. I can go in and say level complete. I can say all users, and I can look at the level name that they completed, right? And boom, it goes out there. And it's easier to see in a table, but we have that, right? So you can see that here on the left-hand side, people in December. Let's move this forward to see if it's any better. I don't know. Maybe it won't be. Let's change the date to 12/20. And it changes. You see here on the left, number of current users. Again, not a lot. We're trying to work on that, but here's the levels that were completed. Animals 1, puzzles 82. That's daily puzzles, right? So somebody got to daily puzzles 82, right? Also holidays and whether they finished it or not. So again, there's not unique information about a user, but there's a lot of things you can look at. There's also the ability to go ahead and modify things on the fly. Now, these aren't for analytics, but data. In other words, configuration data that the game can look at on a server and say, today I want to do 10% off something, or today let's make this level easier than before, or harder than before, or let's make it the screen blue, or whatever we want to change. We can change based on a configuration we've made on a server. So the game that you buy can change without us sending a new version, without an update. To me, that's interesting, the availability to do that. Again, it's data. It's how you configure the data around the application. And again, this analytics reporting is different. Unreal has the same thing. Hero Engine has it. Anybody who allows you to do this has analytics. Google has their own analytics, right, called Firebase. You can put into your application. So you can use Google Analytics. You can use Unity Analytics. You can use whatever analytics you want to use to get this done and work on it, right? That's the whole thing, is this data is so much data. If you've just started the ESO today, noon, they know that. Now, they may not know it for a little bit. In particular, for Unity, it's a 24-hour block. So they are gathering this data in one particular place, in one server or set of servers. And then at 7 No, at midnight, Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Standard Time, right? It changes and they move it over to the reporting server, which is the way you want to do it anyways. That's another story. So I can look at my data from 7 p.m. Eastern until 7 p.m. Eastern the next day. Those are my blocks of data that keep adding to the data that I have in that reporting database that I can look at. This is all analytics, right? This is how analytics works. There's a whole bunch of things you can look to on the internet about analytics. I'm not going to get into all that. But this is in games. Right? Whether, no matter what you're playing, whether you're playing a online game like Battlegrounds or Battlefield 5 or Elder Scrolls Online or the new Atlas MMO or Ark or any game you're playing, they have analytics for that particular data. They're checking all that, right? Good and bad, they're doing that. And they're using a protocol, right, to pass it back and forth. They're using HTTPS. If they're smart, they're using HTTPS, and they're using something similar. There's a data access layer and then data in the back, and that's fine. Now, there's also another set of data, which we'll talk about, and that data is anti-cheat data. So a new-ish, right, way of doing things is to download with your application another application with your game, another application for anti-cheat, right? Whether it's BattleEye, Easy Anti-Cheat, this application or these applications loaded onto your PC at the same time you load a game. You agree with the acceptance of terms that you're going to let this happen. And what it does is it watches other processes running on your computer. Now, then they could be doing it for nefarious reasons, but I really don't think so, right? They don't have time for that. Now, they could be, but probably not. They're looking for people who are running Cheat Engine or other known programs that get in between the client and the middleware and make changes. All right, remember that diagram I had where we had to look at the guild tools? There was a process over to the PHP middle layer or the data access layer, and then the back end of the server. What a nefarious person would do who's cheating is they'll run a program on their PC that will catch the data after it leaves the client, modify it, and pass it up to the server, just like it hadn't been touched. Right? So that's how you can see somebody who goes from like 1 health to 100 health within a second for no apparent reason. Because all that is data going back and forth. What the person's health is, well, that's all data going back and forth. These process or cheat engines pick that up, tweak it, and then send it on to the middle layer. So what gaming industry has worked towards is something to watch for that. Now, one of the things that you do in a security situation, especially in a client-server situation, you don't trust the client, right? If the user can type in anything. Now, in guild tools, you can, right? You can type in the username and password. There is a chance that somebody could then intercept the message, modify it to run some SQL that you weren't prepared to run. This PHP code that we've looked at doesn't particularly do it yet. I'm working to adding that before it goes to beta. What it's going to do is limit the amount of characters. Now, you can have a character for a username that's so long and a password that's so long, it can't be any longer than that. There's also other ways to check for SQL inside that and things like that. And you want to add that not necessarily for guild tools because it's a little overkill, but for security-wise, you want to have that on top of HTTPS, on top of encryption and things like that, so that you really have covered all the bases on that. And if you have, that's great. But you still have to watch out for these cheat engines because they take the information, they modify it, and they pass it on. And they do it in such a way that that program or the data access layer, the data access layer, let's say that again, the data access layer doesn't know that it's been intercepted since the client. So what these companies have done is they've developed applications that run on your PC or your Xbox or your PS4, when they get there. Right now, they're more concerned about PC because it's hard to load the Xbox, but that's something different. They check other processes that are running on your PC. And they do this because they're looking for these cheat engines, right? So these cheat engines, like I was talking about, they intercept it and they change it. Well, the only way they'll know if it's there is if they interrogate what's running on your PC at the same time the game is running. And they look for different applications that they know are cheat engines. And they will flag somebody. They said, hey, here's somebody that is running something we consider a cheat engine. Now, that doesn't mean they're automatically going to ban you, but you never know. The way security works usually is security takes that information, they're going to do some investigation, and then give a recommendation. So, well, again, it's going to depend how it's going to work, and each company is different. But both BattlEye and AntiCheat, and I'm sure there's others, are checking for things that are running. Again, so they can stop people from being able to intercept it, change it, and send it back to the data access layer without the data access layer knowing what it's doing, without them knowing that it's changed. But this is AntiCheat, and I don't get all that. But again, it's data. Right, so you've set up something that intercepts the data packets, streams of data prior to the data access layer and makes the changes. Right, because they don't know where the data access layer goes to the database, but they do know that the client has got to send data out. So there are ways to find where that data is going out. And if they're not using HTTPS, it makes it that much easier for these cheat engines to grab it and change it. So there's different things they can look at as well. So again, BattlEye, AntiCheat, they're not malware. They are watching what you're doing even when the game's not running, right? Because that's what they've signed up to do. Now, I would think they'd want to at some point say, BattlEye can run whenever, say, Fortnite or ESO is running, but not other times. But I don't think they've gotten to that level yet. The level they've gotten to is they have permission to run and run whenever PC's on. Now, that could be different. I don't know, but that's the way I assume at this point they're residing. Again, this is what they're doing. They're grabbing data. Because whether you're doing analytics or you're doing the data for a game, your health, your stamina, your mana, if you're tracking that up to a server, same thing. If you're doing a leaderboard cheat, same thing. What you're doing is you're going to want to get in between the client and the data access layer and make a change. And these programs look for those. Okay, so here's the end of Stormz Tech Corner for this week. We've looked at anti-cheat data, analytics data, leaderboard data. We've looked at how it works. We've looked at some security. Again, this is Stormzlord. I am co-guild master at ESO and Hands of Fate. I am council member, at Hands of Fate, Ashes of Creation Guild. You can reach me at Stormzlord at twitter.com. You can email me, Stormzlord at Digital Piper Studios. If you wish to support Stormz Tech Corner and the Dungeon Crawler Network, consider clicking the donate link button at the bottom of the website, or going to the Patreon page and supporting Dungeon Crawler Network at the Patreon. You can also support us by subscribing at YouTube, leaving a review on any of the other podcasts at iTunes or Google Play. You're probably not going to see this one there, but the other ones as well, the other podcasts at Dungeon Crawler Network. Thank you. This is Stormzlord. You've joined me for the Gaming Data podcast, and we've looked at all types of gaming data. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.